And this is Brett Bumeter. This is the ZetaMining Show, and today we're going to be talking about the Podcast Movement Conference. We're giving a bit of a recap, myself and Warren Whitlock. We just got back from the conference in Dallas, Texas this last weekend. How are you doing, Warren? I take it you made it back safe and sound?
I'm cool. I saw somebody do this yesterday, as this meant they were going to do this every time a joke worked.
Yeah, there's a Little League baseball player, first girl, I think she's 13, to throw a no-hitter in the Little League World Series, or I can't remember exactly. I'm probably not saying that right, but every time she
does this, and the comic was doing it, so I'm doing it when a joke lands. I like that idea.
Yeah. So congratulations to her. So we made it through the conference. It was a three-day affair, kind of Friday through Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Saw a whole lot of people, a lot of podcasters, a bunch of people we've met in the past. But one of the positives was there were a whole lot of new people that hadn't seen or met before. So that's always a good thing. It's nice to see your old friends when you go to conferences, but it's always good when you get to meet some new people too, and some new groups and perspectives and all that good stuff. So I think we're basically going to talk about some of the positive takeaways that we, things we might have picked up or things that we learned from the conference, and kind of go from there. Do you want to maybe kick it off with a couple, Warren?
Sure, because there were a whole lot of new people and a whole lot of people that hadn't started their podcast yet. And, I think you were the first to mention it to me that everybody seems to have an entrepreneur's podcast now. And, that message is big enough that it does need all of us working on it. That's fine. But once we got over the shock of that, there are a lot of very interesting people that I met doing that. And then, of course, I learned that go find somebody who I should know and spend some time with them, and that worked out just fantastic. There's a lot of people with a lot of passion in the space of podcasting, and it's growing. So, and of course, we've joined that movement by calling our. We got that podcasting wasn't a movement, but there is a trend inside podcasting. There's a movement towards two things. One, call your show an entrepreneur podcast. I'm not too sure about that one, but the other one is that there's people putting together some passionate things and breaking down the idea that a podcast has to be one way or another, an interview on every show, and I'm really glad to see that the clear instructions are not to have the same 3 questions to a guest for every show, but to do something that's unique in how you are. If you live on a dock, that's okay.
Right.
A lot of that be yourself thing, which to me is an overall message I've been getting all along.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the sessions that caught my eye was by a podcast coach named Eric Johnson, and he did a session on how to use elements of storytelling in your shows, and this could apply not just to a podcast, but to videocasts, or even to blog articles, or just maybe even in conversation itself. But he gave a quick, wasn't a quick, it was took the whole session, but he gave 4 elements that I can give quickly, I hope, that might help you kind of get the general idea of it. He basically wanted to make sure that people started to communicate through a story such that the audience can relate, and do that first off with an introduction that shows people where the story is going to go at the end, so that they'll bother to stick around and listen to the rest of the story. And along the way, give some very vivid and, if possible, personal details to help people connect. And then the third step of the 4, and I think this is kind of interesting, is to end the story with a powerful conclusion. And you'd think that ending with powerful conclusion would be the end of it, but the 4th step was to, when you're communicating through podcast or videocast, or even writing a blog article, at the end of it, ask the audience, ask yourself, what else? What comes next? Or what else can be derived from what we know now from the story, or what is it what's our takeaways? And this dovetails into something that you've always coached to me, Warren, and that's when you're writing, don't try to totally encompass the whole conversation. Don't try to win the argument and fill in every single gap in a potential argument, because that leaves your audience with the inability to have any opening to come in and have a conversation with you and share the things that they may know that you do not know. So it's important to consider that. And I thought this kind of added that little extra technique and focus on the what else. And that was one of the useful things that I found. Did you any sessions stand out for you, or networking talks or conversations with folks?
Yeah, I found when we're watching about somebody talk about how advertisers actually want to be involved in podcasting, how major brands are finding out there's something to do, and what they're looking for, and it's not much different than anything we already knew about, but they are out there wanting to reach these audiences, and so it made me extremely grateful that I have some following, some audience, and want to continue to give them things in a way that the sponsors would like that. So that was a big takeaway, and then in general, I learned more from meeting people and making connections and looking for what comes next. And just as you're saying, telling a story, it's beginnings. When you go to a conference, these are beginnings of relationships, not endpoints. So we'll have to follow up and see how those things go.
Right. As you mentioned that, I a lot of times in conferences, you and I both kind of look for those moments where you have connections from one thing to the next, because we've got a great deal of experience at going to conferences, and we can, no matter what the conference is, I think it would be a challenge for us to go to a conference and not take away something positive from it just because we've got that practice and experience. But I too went to that meet the advertiser session, and in the session they mentioned the gentleman that was an advertiser. He has a client that is a company called FanDuel, which is a fantasy football, fantasy sports online company. I know the CEO, Leslie Eccles, from that particular company. I met her at a different conference 3-4 years ago when FanDuel was first launching. And the advertiser in the session, he mentioned, we're looking for more podcasts that cover sports, because sports is a topic where it's easy for an advertiser to make a connection to a show and generate results. But we're also looking for more podcasts that have women running the podcast. And the very next session I sat in on, I sat behind a lady named Brandon Marianne Lee, and I'm just putting up her little card, but she is a fantasy football analyst doing a podcast covering both those demographics in one. She hadn't made that particular show, so I pointed her in the direction of talking to him and to Todd Cochran, who was working with him through Blueberry. And it's those little pieces of the show that I sometimes enjoy. That it's not synergy, but it's that that spontaneous connection where you can help someone get from one place to the next and move on and do some good things.
Well, I call that serendipity because you go out and you try 20 things, you don't know which one's going to work. I'm a direct response kind of guy, so yeah, I have something in mind. I have a new page that you may notice if you look underneath my name, and I want people to go there, and I'm aiming towards that, but it can be an oblique pattern. We can go to wherever. So it's interesting. By the second day of the show, I'm totally in the mode of I'm going to wander around today and see what happens. I had most of the day booked on the first day, and ended up finding pockets of time when I did get this new idea, and I went and sat down and thought about it. Several trips up to the room to check on something, or to just take a rest or whatever. A lot of running around trying to get all that in, And then the next day I find out I'm wandering around, and that's pretty much normal for me. The serendipity doesn't happen until you get to that point of saying, "Oh, it's okay. I can miss a session. I can miss meeting somebody. Maybe the 30 minutes I got to spend with Chris Brogan was enough over one day when he didn't seem to be there the second day. There wasn't anything to conclude on that, and my relationship with him and with others with you is based on a series of events, not one. So what
that's a good point. Yeah, a lot of times we go to these shows and a short, quaint, how you doing kind of conversation that we had 8 years ago at one conference led to us running into each other at another conference, and before you know it, it's 8 years gone by. We've been friends for a long time, done business together, and as well, and that's not just with you and I, but that's with lots and lots of people. And so when we go to these conferences, you don't necessarily expect to meet somebody, shake hands with them, get their business card, go back and do business with them, within the next week. It's the start of that journey. It's the start of the process where you'll continue to build up a relationship. There can be some opportunities where there might be business done right away, but when you go there with the long game kind of in mind, and the real goals of building a helpful relationship for everybody over that time, I think people end up with some good stuff. Did you pick up any like short tips that we might be able to share with people, or little concepts here and there over the course of the show? As an example, one of the tips that kind of came to my attention was there's a service out there. One of them is called SpeakPipe. Another one's somewhat similar called TalkShoe, which I'd heard of years before, but hadn't heard how it could be applied in this way. But for people that are getting poor responses to bringing guests onto their show, and sometimes that can happen because of scheduling. You run the show at this time and they're not available, and what have you. These services allow you to have your guests call in and leave a recorded message for your show. You can, say, here's 3 questions, please answer the questions. Not to break the model again or anything like that, but here's some questions, and then you can take those responses and edit those into a future show. You might even have multiple guests answering a similar question or something like that. But it's a way to, if you want to run a podcast, you can collect some of that valuable insights. And the person that provided the example, they saw their response rate to people that wanted to be on the show increase by like 90%. They were going through a bit of a rut, and people just weren't able to make their particular times no matter what. So they tried this, and all of a sudden just about everybody could do it. Any tips like that, or tricks, or?
Yeah. And my comment on all that is that they put some focus on trying to do it, because I sat in a session and ran some math in my head and then on paper, and actually on paper put the decimal point in the wrong place as to CPM times thousands of listeners and how many subscribers and what I could get paid for it. And while I'm very much of the opinion that podcasting for profit is not a way to go unless it's part of something else that you're doing, the epiphany I got was that there were ways that I could focus in and take care of my audience, and I was able to lay out and say what are the problems that I can't do this, and where can I add to it. So my epiphany was just how easy it is today to launch that. And then talking to others who have been working for months and not launching a podcast, I felt even more that it was great that they said, well, what I need to, well, I've done that like 40 times before. That's not hard. People put off things for their own reason, and I would say that really sums it up. That there's times when I've not been as successful or cashed in quite as much as I thought I was capable of, and those all wind up being the same thing. It's me. Didn't do anything. So one of those trips when I ran to the room and did something, it was verifying that my domain dailywarren.com, check it out under my name, was available, and it, of course, came back that it wasn't available because it was already on my server. So I set it up, and right now it's redirected to an About Me page. It'll probably, by the time anybody sees this, it'll have something else, and then there's a whole plan for when that thing launches and what I'm going to be able to provide to somebody, which I think enhances what we're doing on ZetaMining and some of my other projects. And that epiphany would not have come if I didn't go to this event. Go and sit in the advertiser session, and then I credit Chris Brogan, who was very much saying, you know, go ahead, and I think his new book is The Freak Show, Inherit the Earth. So go ahead and be your freaky self and don't be somebody else.
Yeah, no, the whole weekend, I don't know if we can see this or not, but my goal was to drink the Kool-Aid. A lot of times I go to events, and one of the things that I don't always do well is I get a little too critical. And in my head, I'm not being critical in a negative way. I just like to really analyze things and understand them. But this weekend I was doing my best to remain positive, stay above the critiques, and you know, save that for reflection later. And so I put the sticker for his new book on my iPad, went that far, and you know, I was really doing my best to soak it in. And I would offer a kudo to you. You know, one of the other things that sometimes I do well at conferences, but not always, is if I find that inspiration, the thing that I need to do, sometimes it is good to, you know, head up to the hotel room or whip out the computer in front of everybody and do it right there on the spot. You know, turn the event or that into a hackathon type of opportunity to hack and fix whatever it is that you need to do. Because sometimes I go to the show and I'll come back with a list of to-dos, and my to-do list is already long enough. So when I get back, you know, you're dealing with all the fires and stuff like that. You don't always get to the to-do list of good ideas that you had from the show. One of the other things that I kind of stumbled across was I caught like the last 5 or 10 minutes of a session from Lou Mangello. I'd been talking with somebody else beforehand. I missed the session. They're all supposed to be recorded, so I'm hoping to see them in full later. But I wanted to see him live a little bit because I'd never heard him speak live, and so I always like to kind of get that in-person feel for you know, someone's speaking capabilities. And he was talking about how to build community. In this case, you know, in the context of a podcaster show, he does a show on reviewing Disney World, Disney land related items, and has been doing a podcast on this for a long time. He has a very robust and engaged group of followers in his community. Now, I'm not the biggest Disney fan in the world myself, but I'm interested in how he does what he does, and he offered the suggestion that you should hold events for your audience, little things, meetups or what have you, but after the event, put together a recap video of that event. And you can use video that you might take from the event yourself, but you can also source and collect pictures and maybe a little video from the people that went to the event itself, and then you can kind of mix it all together in a short 2 or 3 minute thing. And it's just another way to help people see the event, realize that they were there, maybe see some of the folks that, you know, sometimes these events are large and you don't get to see everybody. And I thought that was a really good idea. And then Sunday night, I went to one of his events, which was a big dinner at a restaurant there near the convention center. I missed you. You were with a different group that night. I did see you, but I didn't have a chance to talk to you that night. But,
yeah, I think that restaurant was full of people from this convention.
Yeah, so he had like 30 or 40 or 50 people or something, and we were all lined up in a table. Some of those folks drove in from 3-4 hours away. They weren't even there for the conference. They just came to see Lou, the person that they, you know, listened to his podcast. And I think that just speaks to, you know, not only did he give a good tip at a conference, but he's demonstrating that tip in action. And, you know, his past success like that is, you know, drawing people, you know, to hop in the car and deal with traffic on a Sunday night to drive 3 hours one way just to come and hang out for a little bit. So that one I thought was a pretty good idea, and something that I plan on using with my Startup Weekend events, and maybe with some WordPress meetup events as well in the future. I think that's a really handy one.
That's
what other?
You know, my thoughts on that is, you and I've talked online, offline, whatever, about Startup Weekend, and that I go to one on a regular basis. You work on presenting one there, and yeah, every time they start off, they ask people how many people are new here, and it's half of them. And it's easy to not drink the Kool-Aid and say, hey, what do I need to know all these newbies for? Or they're just passing through. What am I going to do with this? Especially in my case, because I'm not a presenter or anybody at that conference. I'm just wandering through, and my thoughts on it right now is working on that community for the other 50 weeks of the year makes some sense, and talking to them very important to have that kind of community. And while I've always thought I was out to serve all the people who follow me on Twitter or on my mailing list or whatever, are they a community? So maybe I ought to start referring to them as, hi, followers.
Right.
I can't think of a good name for them. I think Little Monsters is taken. So.
Yeah. Well, that speaks to actually one of the things that
wind up with.
One of the things that a side tip it reminds me of that I picked up from the conference is when we're doing our show here, we need to talk to the people who are listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. We're glad you joined us, as opposed to, hey, go out and do, talking to people as if they're not there. We do the podcast so that we can get closer to people and make you feel like you're part of this show with us. And sometimes that takes a little bit of a judo move in your head to realize, yes, I'm talking with Warren, but I'm also talking with everybody else here too. Everybody that's watching from YouTube or chimed in on Google+. And so that's one of those mental things I need to do.
Of course, I wouldn't be here if it was just to talk to you. I think our format of two guys talking to each other is really like stretching, being able to say, and hey, join us. And we tried the getting people to comment, and the truth is we're not watching the comments, though we if there were any, I think we could easily adapt and do that. But yeah, it's a whole different mindset of why are you producing the show, which I like. The great line I heard was, "Don't say you're a fly on the wall." And boy, if anyone's guilty of that, it's us. We're not saying people aren't a fly on a wall watching us, but hey, people, you out there. I'm just putting up with Brett so I can talk to you.
That's right. So, with all that in mind, and I had a huge mind map of different things that I picked up through the conference. Lots of ideas, some of them specific to this show, some of them specific to other things, some of them for clients. But we don't want to hold all of our other guests and friends up here that are listening. There were a couple areas I thought the show could improve, and I wanted to talk just a little bit, maybe one from each of us. It's a brand new show, and I thought they did a sensational job of putting on a brand new show. Covering lots of bases, but everybody can always improve. We can improve, and we want those of you watching, listening right now to let us know how we can improve. But from your perspective, Warren, what areas or area for improvement do you think might help them the most if they could fix one thing?
One thing, I don't know. If the continuity of knowing that it's going to be there, there were the old hands talking about, we've been here before, we've done all this before, and hey, we're part of that group. And then there were a whole lot of new people. And while there were some sessions geared to newbies and other ones geared to experts, I think you can't overdo that. You can't letting people know that. Another thing that kind of bothered me at first, and I'm kind of reconciled since, is the talk of the other shows that there's a lot of people who think of it. I'm in podcasting. Now that I have this show, I'm not going to go to anything else. And I'm going to go, sheesh, there's actually some shows that right now are better. that you ought to be attending, depending on what they're doing. And the big one being, of course, being an NMX. And actually heard people say, well, I've been before, I'm not going because they've grown in a different direction and they're not taking care of podcasters. And since I'm very involved with that show, thought, well, I didn't kind of like that at first. Then thinking about it, that is a market opportunity, that there are people who think they need to go to one show a year and make sure they're being served in a way that is best. But overall, start to finish, everything went as planned. No way off the time on start and stop times. No major people missing. The layout was such that you couldn't miss the vendors, but they didn't really push the vendors on you. I probably would eliminate a stage right outside the session rooms and in the middle of the vendors, where somebody, when there were good presentations, that's great, but as such things go, vendor presentations are not usually the best. So having those presentations, fine, the way they came off, the logistics there a little bit. Other than that, like I say, great time, great location, met good people, plenty of food.
Yep, no, I agree. I saw, for me, there was a Saturday night event, and as these things often go in all sorts of conferences, it was a little on the loud side. I don't generally mind loud, but for whatever reason, the Saturday night event. So right. The Saturday night event was extra loud, and myself and many people that I spoke to felt a little worn down. It just wore us out with the just how loud it was. It's difficult to talk and stuff like that. And we're all there to talk with others like us. It's nice to be in a neat venue and see some, hear some good music or something like that. But it was just a little bit extra loud from that perspective. And something that just dawned on me as you were talking a second ago is there were a lot of new people there, a lot of people that were there to start a podcast that still hadn't done it. I saw people that had websites and they had printed brochures built up and they had the equipment. They just hadn't hit record yet. And I kind of think that it wouldn't hurt to have some sort of event at something like this podcast movement where they, walk every new person in that hasn't done a show yet and have them record something right there on the spot and put it live. And it could, it doesn't have to be their podcast. It could be, part of podcast movement, but just so that they'll have had the experience of doing a show, jumping into the pool a little bit, realizing that it's not such a big deal, and maybe even, there's plenty of coaches and trainers and tips and mentors there. They could get some free advice afterwards, and lots of other people around. But something to just help them dip their feet into the water a little bit and get past that first. Well, I'm gonna do it, but I haven't done it yet. I'm gonna do it when everything's just perfect and lined right, and the planets are aligned, and Sagittarius is in Taurus or whatever that is. I don't know.
Well, actually that's the market opportunity I saw, is that holding a Get Your Podcast Started boot camp the day before this event, or anytime during the year, and either including passes to the event or have a reunion meetup there, a refresher course that you get as part of the other course. And it doesn't have to be done by the same people putting on podcast movement. There's lots of opportunity there because they're getting it done. But now that you mention that, I expect when I go to something like that I'm going to be interviewed by somebody, and I may find somebody and do an interview myself. And did not happen one time.
I agree.
It's like at former Blog World shows, now NMX, I can't get through there without doing 10 interviews. And the size of it, but one thing NMX does is provide a place to do that. The step and repeats and the things like that. There was something there was that kind of a place, and I saw a little bit going on, but and it might have to do with what people are expecting. There was somebody who was trying to get me for an interview last week, They were able to give me one time when I had an appointment someplace, and I said, sorry, I can't make this, and I'm going to Dallas this weekend, and we'll do it next week. And hey, you're going to that, aren't you? And, yes, I am. Well, then let's do it there. Oh, I couldn't possibly pack my equipment. And, you know, now that it just came up, I realized if I saw that person, I forgot, I didn't put the two together. I'm now making a mental note. As soon as we get done, I've got to go off and find out what happened to that request for an interview. And you know, most of what we get from that is you have something to give the world. Go ahead and start giving it. And I'm talking to you.
Yeah. We're talking to everybody out there. As an example, one of the companies that was there, Royal DECA, they're a design video placement. They're launching a podcast. Now, they haven't launched yet, but they did have their scheduler built in. And this is something that we don't have on the ZetaMining show yet, but it's something I intend to get on our website quickly so that you, the people watching and listening that want to be on the show, you can come in and easily pick a time and a place to do that, to get scheduled to jump on our schedule. And I did with them set up an interview. They have an interesting concept. They talk to people that used to be skateboarders and ask them how that might impact how that has an effect on their life.
We've got some line problems. And
yeah, I saw you. It looked like it dropped off for a second and then came back. And I can hear you and see you fine now. Are you picking me up?
Yeah, I can hear and see me fine too. It's you. So it's something. It's that thing I think we used to have on a regular basis where where your microphone gets wonky and you do something and fix it after a certain amount of time. But
anyway, we're probably a good place to wrap up anyway.
And so I'll wrap up the show today because I think yours is doing something. And please check the recording and say, hey, thanks for coming. Be sure to check out dailywarren.com, which will have I share and promote and help and write with a lot of things every day. And now I've just decided to put one place for it. There will be a podcast, but currently it's just going to be a sharing place. So dailywarren.com. And you've been watching Warren Whitlock. I'm at Warren Whitlock, and Brett Bumeter, who is at Brett Bum. Reach out to us, talk to us, and you know, leave us a message. Tell us that you heard Brett just fine, and it's all Warren's fault, and or whatever you want. And I am talking to you. See you next time.